Oh my gosh, what is happening? I'm hitting all the wrong buttons today, guys. You see what happens when we take 3 days off instead of two? I forget how to
Yeah,
use StreamYard.
yeah. I've, it's
Well,
weird coming off like a 3 day, uh, 3 days, kind of like, oh, are you ready or are you not? Yeah, but yeah, bro. All right, well, welcome.
yeah, hey, okay, so we're 40 seconds in. Welcome everybody to StackChart Spotlight. Normally this is a show we do on Mondays, but yesterday Garrett and I were swimming together in the pool. We had our beers, we weren't together. He's in a different state. Garrett, you're in like Texas or something, I don't know. And I'm in
Tennessee.
I was trying so security through obscurity. It's just like I'm in Denver.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not Tennessee. I am in Wyoming.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of Wyoming, I've been watching this show. I binge watched it over the holiday break. Have you ever watched Outer Range?
Man, you're reading my mind. Yes, I was actually finished up the first season over the weekend. It is. I like it. It's
I like
addictive.
it too, man. And I
Yeah,
just
I'm gonna have to
finished
hit you
the
up after
second
this. I have
season.
some thoughts.
Yeah, I have thoughts too. I just finished the second season, and they just released it like
Oh,
I don't know, a week or so ago, and so
oh,
now
then
I
we
got to
can't
wait a whole
talk.
nother year.
Yeah, we can't talk then because I just finished the end of the first season. So
Well, we can. I'm not the kind of guy that'll spoil it unless people tell me to spoil it. But let me tell you, everybody dies in the end, and
Jesus Christ, dude. What are you doing?
I tell my kids that when they're like, "Oh my gosh, did you see blah 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 yet?" I'm like, "Yeah, everybody dies in the end. Doesn't matter what. It could be the latest episode of Bluey. Everybody dies in the end." Well, hey, today we're going to
Horrible,
talk
man.
about today about identity, dark web, and identity monitoring.
Mhm.
Um, and I would be remiss to talk about this without saying, Garrett, you were, I believe, the product manager at ID Agent, right?
Yes, I
So,
was.
so you can teach us a few things when it comes to dark web monitoring.
Yeah. I mean, just I think it's more of a. I'm familiar with the behind the scenes workings on how a lot of this works with the data
Hmm.
ingestion and what they're searching for. There's a lot of people out there who are very familiar with the dark web and the tools that are coming out. They're familiar, especially in this industry. What was this? Troy Hunt, came out with Haven't Been Pond, and that really put the dark web and this, easy to access, search your information and see what's out there. Um, but from my perspective, the dark web is kind of one of those things where, with from the angle of compromise detections, things like that, it is low hanging fruit to be able to do because you could go and you can grab grab a dump, and just look, and then, but that's kind of stuff that we would trying to put all the information together to make it make sense. Because dark web's been around for a long time, and there's many aspects to it. But for this stuff, things get more automated, uh, to the point where they are now like the technology is being able to go in, just like, I'm gonna scan a dump, you know, and see, what's out there. But now it's getting to the point where we're seeing a lot of cool stuff like, I think it was guys like Dark Owl, in different areas. Those guys like, it's kind of a search engine type thing. Like, hey, is there chatter? So it's getting really interesting to see what's out there. The dark web
It
is
really is.
important, but to be monitoring for it. There's a lot of people now who are doing it because when you go into your clients, And you can only do so much. They need to do their part too, and doing their part too is listening to your advice, your expertise of saying, hey, listen, you don't you guys are using the same password for everything. For me to be able to do my job to protect you, you know I can only do so much. We need you to just, or at least let me handle the passwords. Let me get a password manager, whatever. um yeah, the dark web's low hanging fruit for finding out compromised stuff, and it's just yeah.
Absolutely, man. So, hey, let's talk features.
Mhm.
So you brought up earlier, have I been pwned? And
Huh?
I would say like most of the dark web monitoring solutions out there are at least looking at that. But there are many other things that a good dark web monitoring solution should be doing. And um, I'm not going to talk about ID agent today, only because I don't want MSPs to be like, well, of course you guys are going to talk about ID agent. That's your baby, like um so I'm purposely not going to go into features over at ID agent, not because it's a bad platform, not because it's Kaseya. I like both now. I'm I have nothing against it. I just want to give another platform a fair shake. And
Yeah.
today I want to actually look at U Breach by U Secure. I'm really impressed by what these guys are doing, because they've got U Breach, and then they've got U Breach Pro, and that's an advanced version built specifically for MSPs, and it's going to allow MSPs to run domain level monitoring. It'll let you view exposed information like passwords, and you can receive alerts for new breaches. It's going to monitor an extensive database of breach sources that that go far beyond have I been pwned. They're going to be checking out hacking forums, paste sites. They're like, it's real dark web monitoring. It's, you know what I mean? Like they're actually monitoring the dark web, whereas sometimes platforms aren't actually monitoring the dark web. They're just monitoring have I been pwned, and they're doing the monitoring. These guys are going a step beyond, and I'm sure you guys did the same thing over at ID Agent. I have no doubts in my mind about that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the domain level monitoring thing, you can monitor all the email accounts under a client's domain. It's going to allow you to assess company-wide breaches in a cost-effective way. And then you can get instant breach notifications, real-time alerts, anytime a breach is detected across any of those sources. That's going to give you, the MSP, the ability to detect and provide rapid response. And then they've even got the ability for you to use it for prospecting. And I think this is something that you always recommended as well. Like, run some free domain scans for existing and prospective clients to generate breach reports that highlight the urgent need for dark web monitoring services. Um, and that's the one thing that I think a lot of MSPs don't really give a whole lot of credit to how important and necessary dark web monitoring really is. Um, because, like you said, it's low hanging fruit. It almost feels too easy. Maybe it's so easy we shouldn't do it. That's the way I looked at it.
Well, well, there were a lot of people that come over here and be like, "This is just marketing fluff." There's no this. This is easy to do, and whatever. Um, but at least in my experience, it goes beyond that. Because it establishes the hygiene of the cybersecurity posture that you're implementing with your clients can lead for you. I mean, so it's also for me, you could go in there and you do it. Kind of gives you an idea of where, sort of how they're gonna listen to you. You know, I think say,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I'm gonna listen to you for your expertise, and it's one of those things where the low hanging fruit is, I think in some responses was like, why do I need to charge for this? It's like, nobody's saying go, make a living off of it, but it's just a tool set and being able to know, because when you look at insurance, and compliance and all those guys, at some point they're going to ask you, is there monitoring in this? So it goes beyond the low hanging fruit of the way things like it's more like this is easy baseline stuff, and
Mhm.
there's a lot that you could walk away from, or how the client's going to listen to you. Secondly, you're going to be able to get your compliance and stuff. It's just it's something you could just kind of tuck into your current services. Yeah, so that's it's kind of that was what it's challenging, 'cause it's like, but
Mhm.
one of the yeah. Go ahead, Steve. I know I
Well,
ramble on.
no, it's all good, man. So there are a few things that we should be uh, thinking about as MSPs when it comes to buying dark web and identity monitoring. So here are some
Mhm.
things I want you guys to think about. Data coverage and sources. So we already touched on this a bit. Where does the vendor source their dark web data, and how often is it updated? That's another important question.
Yeah.
You want to look for comprehensive coverage across multiple sources, including hacker forums, paste sites, etc. And then you also want to know, does the vendor have access to invite-only dark web communities to provide the most relevant and up-to-date data?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is something where it's important, especially when what we see a lot on the dark web is people would go out, try to make a quick buck and duplicate that data, call it something else or whatever. So there's the validations aspect to it. But yeah, that is important about the data coverage of where the sources. But um, the other thing too is, I think there's a perfect example for Lion Guard, the integrations. So you get
Mhm.
into Lion Guard. I'm a fan of Lion Guard because I think what they do with the change management is just is great. But the change management, you have all these services, 365, you're on RML, they have all this stuff, your DNS. But they're monitoring, this is the example of like a data integration that was here, but they're monitoring, all of those. So if those dark web credentials get pinged on and some random stuff here and there, you're going to be able to see which aspects of are being, are vulnerable. So
Mhm.
integrations are really important because they, just like any of them, they serve a big deal in terms of like data relationship correlation, how it really is going to impact your workflow and the reality of you know where this credential is being used. Maybe you didn't know that credential is being used at a certain platform. So integrations and the context behind it is critical. It really is.
Yeah. And then something else to think about is reporting and guidance. Does the vendor provide regular reports on the latest dark web trends and threats, along with recommendations on how to mitigate them? Is expert guidance available to help MSPs make informed decisions about that security strategy based on the dark web intelligence? Um, that's probably the hardest part. Is all right. Great. I know that my client had a breach. Now what? Like changing the
Yeah.
password is half the battle. How do we prevent that from happening in the first place? Because sometimes it's like, well, Adobe or LinkedIn gets hacked and all the credentials get released, right? But other times it's you got socially engineered and your credentials got stolen somehow, and that ended up in the dark web. So I mean I don't think that that's the most common method of things ending up in the dark web, but I think that does happen. um what are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, if that's the thing is, being able to understand, the what do you do after that guidance is a big deal,
Yeah.
because that's what your client's going to ask you too. Like, oh, what do you do? What if you were found? Do I tell my clients? What's the guidance on that? So it depends on their resources, their reporting, what they're going to provide to you. So it's always good to have because it gives you talking points and it gives you sort of a structure how to navigate that. Because no matter how careful, how good you've been, multiples of excuse me, I apologize. You can have multiples of different passwords or been password generated. Something can still be breached, and even though that one password, might not apply to other sites, there's still that thing of like, how are you going to navigate this, to especially with your clients. So I think for me, part of that comes also in terms like the real-time alerting of that. It's like it happens like, when are they going to let you know? So that's a big thing too, as far as I'm concerned. So and the other thing too, I think the pricing is, it's pretty important. I mean, it's also what they provide. Are they gonna mitigation for you? What is it? So I see pricing all over the place. For free, just it's just sort of part of what we're offering, to completely dedicated to it. So pay for what you get, but at the same time, it also depends on the context of how it's being used and the tool that you're using it. So that's something to consider.
And I want to throw out there that like there are different levels of dark web monitoring. Okay, so like for example, 1Password, huge fan of that platform. They've got what they call Watchtower, um, and with Watchtower, what it's doing is it's looking at all the domains that you've got listed in your 1Password database, and then it's looking at all the credentials for those domains and saying, are any of these listed on any of the various sites and locations that they check that against. So that's helpful for when they already know your credentials, like 1Password already knows your credentials and it's letting you know which ones are not secure. But then there's platforms like Ubreach and LionGuard and ID Agent and all that, um, where they don't know your credentials,
Excuse me.
but they know your domain or your email address, and then sometimes they'll even do additional searches where maybe you're giving them like personal identity information like name and address and that kind of stuff, and they're keeping an eye out for that information too. So I would say understanding the different platforms and how comprehensive of searches they run is important, and understanding that your clients also should be considering something that protects them as an individual, not just as an MSP to the business, but you should educate all of the end users and say, hey, look, as an MSP, we don't offer individual identity monitoring. It's just not what we do. But we recommend one of these three places. Go sign up, get yourself some identity monitoring, because this stuff is happening every day and it could happen to you, and this is going to protect you.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to slow down either. The
It's
whole
really not.
dark web is just going to skyrocket in terms of. I mean, what was it, like 2.5 million people? They estimate had a daily traffic in the dark web every day.
That
That's just going to go. You know,
that actually blows my mind in both directions. Like, one, that 2.5 million people know how to get to the dark web and use it. But then when I sit here and I think, what's the world population? Are they saying 8 billion now? Like, that's not a big percentage of the population of our planet. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that only 2.5 million people are accessing the dark web every day, and it's not a higher number. but I think that number is going to grow, unfortunately. That is, however, all the time we have for today. Catch us next week. I believe next week, aren't we talking about EDR or MDR?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So come check out what we got next week, guys. I think you'll like it. Take care.